hello to everyone, and it's just fantastic to see such a great crowd here today. As you're well aware, and hopefully I know there's some people who were at the forum last year and some people who are at the forum for the first time, so that's fabulous to have our returning participants and also people who are attending the forum for the first time. So as you're well aware, and Ben mentioned it in his presentation, that the Victorian Active Ageing Partnership is really aiming to increase physical activity opportunities for older Victorians, but particularly for older Victorians who may be socioeconomically disadvantaged, isolated, lonely, and basically not currently engaged in physical activity. So we have three key priority areas in VAAP, as Simon said. Three key priority areas: development of partnerships, the development of workforce and organisational capacity, and the development of pathways for the engagement of older people. And probably we're coming to the end, towards the end of the second year of our 3-year project. And the main mechanisms by which we've been doing our work and engaging stakeholders, and I have to say as the manager of the project, it's just been absolutely overwhelming and delightful, the level of engagement we've had from so many different sectors where physical activity opportunities are provided for older people: local councils, fitness leisure centres, community health services, youth 3As, neighbourhood houses, and lots of private providers, individual providers as well. So it's been absolutely fabulous. And I guess we've been trying to do our work in the project. I mean, the audience for the project is service providers. And then by assisting service providers, we're aiming to ultimately improve the physical activity opportunities for older Victorians. We've been lots of information sharing. We have our newsletter, we have our forum, we've had lots of presentations, we've connected with lots of different groups. So a mechanism in the project is certainly information sharing. As per Ben's presentation this morning, doing research to then look at translating that research into practice. So that's been a very key component of actually creating new research, but also translating current evidence-based research into practice. Capacity building. There's so many great things happening out there in various sectors already, but we're really aiming to assist service providers and build the capacity of individual service providers and the organisations. And Ben mentioned it, and it also came up in Kylie's presentation, that idea of networking, the partnerships. Everyone, and I know in talking to lots of people during the course of this project, that everyone is so busy and often resource poor, and it's very hard to take the time to actually do that networking and create those partnerships. But we know it actually will help you and ultimately older people in the end. So I think we've all really got to try to make that time to really sort of take the time to really focus on those partnerships. What are the other resources just nearby? Well, who are the other service providers in our patch that we could actually work together with? And of course, the development and tools of resources, and that's one thing that I'll be particularly talking about now in my presentation. Hopefully you're aware of our evidence-based framework for the engagement of older people in physical activity that we created in the first year of our Victorian Active Ageing Partnership. Again, this was Ben and his colleagues at Monash particularly looked at the evidence, also talked to a range of service providers to develop what we fondly refer to as the wheel, which really the wheel doesn't quite do the justice to the amount of work that went into this, but it really sort of details the key attributes of committed and equipped organisations, appropriate and rewarding programs, and skilled and attentive leaders, the attributes that the evidence tells us are really important to ensure the engagement and also the sustained engagement of older people in physical activity. So that was a fantastic piece of work, and I know we've had a very positive response from that. However, we're not stopping there. We always had the plan in the project to take our evidence-based framework and translate it into a tool that could be used by people in their day-to-day practice. So we are developing a thing called a self-assessment tool and resources. Now, the philosophy around the self-assessment, when we first started thinking about this thing, we were calling it an audit tool. We thought, nope, we won't use that word audit. Everyone hates that term audit. It's not designed to be an audit tool. It really is a tool, and that's why we changed it to use the term self-assessment tool. It's a tool that actually is designed to really review and reflect on what people are doing and to really promote a sort of a quality improvement approach to your current practice. So the idea of quality improvement rather than assessment or accreditation or competition and comparison. So it's more really that positive, more quality improvement approach is what we are wanting to engender with this tool. In doing a bit of background research and reading about the development of such tools, the literature was saying that really it's important to understand the user of tools, to consider the workload in using any sort of tools, because it's one thing to have lots of tools, lots of great things have been created over time, but often people are just too busy to use them. Also, if we were going to develop, it wasn't a matter of Ben and I and other members of our coordination team sitting up in some little office creating this thing. We had to actually talk to the potential users of the tool. We also had to check with them and with subsequent other stakeholders the ease of the use. Was the language in the tool, was it appropriate? Did people understand what we were saying? Was the language relevant to the different sort of people who were going to be ultimately using the tool? And if we were using any sort of criteria, were those criteria going to be ultimately helpful to then allow people to actually then think about how ways in which they could improve what they were doing? And then the big $60,000 question or $2 million question is, how do we actually promote this thing so that people will actually use it? So I'm very grateful, and many of these people are in the room. We established a self-assessment tool and resources working group, and because we had the initial plan of having this tool applicable to a range of settings, we had representatives in our working group from community health, fitness leisure centres, local councils, neighbourhood houses, regional sports assembly, the sports industry, and the U3A Network Victoria. So a great array of people, and there was fantastic engagement from all those people. It's not easy to be involved in working groups. Again, it's something on top of what everyone's doing in their daily work, but the engagement, I was really pleased that people were willing to engage with this process. So what we have come up with, and this is still in a draft form, is our self-assessment tool and resources. Now you'll notice, I'll flick through these next 3 slides, you will notice that we cover the elements that are covered in the wheel in our evidence-based best practice framework. We have a section that looks at organisations. We have a section that looks particularly at programs to make sure that they are appropriate and that older people find them rewarding. And we have a section that looks particularly at the attributes to do with leaders, to ensure that leaders are skilled and attentive. And again, Ben mentioned that in his talk that actually focused on the harder to reach groups, also was sort of very relevant to a broader population of older people. Now, just you'll notice the various headings across the top of each of those 3 pages. I'll just list them here so they're a little bit easier to read. The first 2 are components and key features, which relate again to our framework. The criteria, really again with the working group, we were trying to work out, okay, if you talk about an attentive leader or a program that's appropriate, what does that look like in practice? So with our working group, we were working to actually try to tease out how would someone know if that existed. So we tried to work out what was the most accurate criteria to include in our tool. Then people were asked to think about in their service, does it currently exist? Yes or no, or maybe what the question may not be appropriate to their setting. What are we currently doing well? It's not really supposed to be, intended to be a big stick with people. Like there are lots of good things that people are currently doing well. What might we need to improve? Again, just thinking, okay, we're doing well, but maybe we could do better. So what are the elements we could actually improve compared to the criteria. Are we, this evidence-based criteria, are we currently doing that, or could we sort of do better on what we're currently doing? And so then we have our section on helpful tips and resources. So this is the actual sort of live tool as it currently exists. And I'll just take you to one of the tabs, the organisation tab, and you'll see that we have attention and care, our criteria there, our physical activity is tailored to the abilities and preferences of participants. Risk management actions promote safety and appropriateness of the physical activity and the physical activity environment. We've also got little hover buttons here that actually give a little bit more detail so that people aren't quite clear what that criterion means. We've got our hover buttons to actually assist in providing further explanation. I'll just top out of that. And one thing you'll see also on the side is our helpful tips and resources. Okay, so if you click on the helpful tips and resources in that column on the tool, you'll come up with some very helpful tips and resources that if you need to improve what you're doing in that issue in relation to attention and care, we've got some ideas and suggestions about how you might actually go about that. So the mode of potential use of this tool is not only some people, when we did a recent consultation, thought, oh yes, well it's very fine and good for people who might be starting up new activities. We don't actually see it that way. We actually think it'll be a really handy tool for people who may be starting up new programs and activities, but we actually also think it'd be really handy for people who have been doing their programs and activities for some period of time, just to reflect and review on what they have been doing. It can be used flexibly. You don't have to sit down and do this thing all in one go. You might work on it over a period of time. So it can be used flexibly and adapted to your setting. We do think that organisational commitment is very important. It might be one thing for a very enthusiastic fitness instructor to think, oh yes, I'm going to do that, and they can. But it would be really nice to have the buy-in of their managers so that if there are implications of the tool beyond just what the fitness instructor can do, then the managers would also be on board. We also have heard from various sectors that it can be valuable within other broader processes, such as accreditation, for community health services and so on. In our recent stakeholder consultation, we actually asked them, apart from getting feedback about the draft tool and how it could be improved in its next version, we did ask them whether they thought that the self-assessment tool provides enough information for service providers to make improvements in their operations and activities. And 90% of the respondents said yes. We also asked them how they rated the potential overall usefulness of the tool, and 89% rated it as excellent, very good, or good. So the next steps. We are now working on the next draft based on the feedback we received from that recent consultation, and we are going to maybe tailor it slightly for specific groups. We realise that people in the U3A sector, people in the neighbourhood houses sector, and people in the sports industry maybe have slightly different needs to those in the fitness and leisure and in the community health sector. So we are going to tailor it slightly to try to meet those specific settings a bit more. But we need you. I would love people to come up to me and say, look, I'm from a community health service, I'm from a U3A, I'm from a fitness leisure centre, and yeah, I'd be happy to trial the next version of the tool, maybe over a 6-week or 2-month period. So you can come and speak to me today, or you can actually contact me. I've actually put a note about this up on our networking hub, so my details are there if anyone would like to email me or phone me to say, look, yeah, I'd be prepared to be in a trial for the next version of the tool, because if we all work together on this thing, it'll end up being a really fantastic product. So it would be a supported pilot. We wouldn't just say, look, here's the tool, go and use it. We would work with you and really assist you to use the tool, and we would want to get the feedback so we can produce an even better product. And then ultimately we'll be looking next year to then implement the next version of the tool so that we can really gain the benefit of something that I think would be of great value to service providers and then ultimately to older people. Thank you.
Okay, so it's question time again. Don't leave it all to the end. Surely there's a question. Now, so you know that there's absolutely no reason for any of you to be standing out at lunchtime not talking to anyone, because Jen has actually said, come and seek her out and they will assist you in using that tool. So we've got someone down here.
My name's Chris. I'm from Colac Area Health, where we have a community health centre. I'm just wondering if the tool would be useful to use across organisations, say if you're working with another local health provider or a gym or something like that.
We certainly, certainly one element of the tool does talk about partnerships and relationships with other providers, because we know that partnership and networking and will actually really enhance the referral and the transition of older people from one setting to another. So that is currently covered as an element in the tool.
You're going to make me work for it, aren't you? All right, well, if that's the end of any questions, again, if there's probably things you do want to talk to, but you'd like to seek Jen out, so she will be available during the lunch break. But also you can get hold of her at the email address there. Also check the website for the reports, etc. So please put your hands together for Jen Nolan.